The scalding coffee hit my white dress like a declaration of war. Mom's perfectly manicured hand held the empty cup, her smile as cold as the silence that followed. "That's how we treat trash around here, Serafina," she announced to our entire family brunch table. 23 years of being the disappointment daughter, and this was my breaking point. But what happened next would destroy everything they thought they knew about their perfect family legacy. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and sometimes it burns the whole house down. Hey, beautiful souls! Before we dive into this explosive family drama, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you're ready for a revenge story that'll have you questioning everything about family loyalty, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this journey is about to get wild. Trust me, you won't want to miss what Serafina discovers next. The coffee stain on my dress was nothing compared to the stain on my soul as I sat in that bathroom stall crying into cheap paper towels. 20 minutes earlier, I'd walked into the Riverside Country Club thinking this family brunch might finally be different. Maybe Mom would acknowledge my promotion at the marketing firm. Maybe my sister Cordelia would stop treating me like I was contagious. Maybe Dad would look at me with something other than disappointment. Instead, I got humiliated in front of the entire extended family because I dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, we could discuss something other than Cordelia's latest business acquisition or her husband's trust fund. Serafina always has to make everything about herself, Mom had whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Some people never learn their place. That's when I'd mentioned Dad's new car, a pristine Bentley he'd bought last month. "Funny how business is struggling, but luxury purchases keep happening," I'd said innocently. The coffee came immediately after. But as I sat there, something nagged at me. Dad had been acting strange lately. Nervous phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered rooms. Hushed conversations with Cordelia that stopped when others approached. And that Bentley, a $150,000 car, when he'd been crying poverty about the family construction business for months. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never done before. I Googled our family business Morrison Construction. What I found made my blood run cold. The company had received a massive government contract 6 months ago. $8.7 million for a veterans housing project. But according to the public records, the project was listed as delayed indefinitely, with material complications. Yet the initial payment of $2.3 million had already been dispersed. My hands shook as I dug deeper. Property records showed Dad had purchased 3 new properties in the last 4 months. Cordelia's struggling boutique had somehow expanded to 4 locations across the state. Mom's tight budget had accommodated a $20,000 kitchen renovation. Then I found something that made me physically sick. A small news article buried on page 6 of the local paper. Local veterans face housing delays. The story detailed how 67 disabled veterans were still waiting for the affordable housing that Morrison Construction had been contracted to build. Some were living in their cars. Others had been forced to move hours away from their families and medical care. My father, the man who'd raised me on stories of his own father's service in World War II, who had a flag folded in military precision on his mantle, was stealing from veterans. But it got worse. I found the incorporation documents for a shell company called Riverside Development LLC. The registered agent was Cordelia Morrison Fletcher. The business address was Mom's friend's accounting office. And according to the bank routing information I could access through my own business connections, money from the veterans contract was being funneled through this fake company. They weren't just stealing from the government. They were stealing from heroes who'd served their country, men and women who'd sacrificed everything and were now being betrayed by the very people contracted to help them. My phone buzzed with a text from Cordelia. "Stop embarrassing yourself and go home. Some of us have actual responsibilities." Actual responsibilities. Like managing a money laundering operation, I screenshot everything: bank records, property deeds, contract documents, incorporation papers. Then I called my college roommate Jessica, who now worked as an investigative journalist for the state newspaper. Jess, I need to meet with you tonight and bring someone who understands government contracts and fraud. Sarah, you sound terrible. What's going on? My family isn't just dysfunctional, I whispered, watching through the bathroom window as they continued their brunch without me. Dad was laughing at something Cordelia said while Mom refilled mimosas like she hadn't just publicly humiliated her own daughter. They're criminals. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd spent years treating me like the family failure, the daughter who couldn't live up to their standards. Dad had refused to loan me money for graduate school, claiming the business was barely afloat. Mom had forgotten to invite me to family events, saying I always brought down the mood. Cordelia had actively sabotaged job opportunities for me, telling mutual contacts that I was unreliable and unstable. But I was the only honest one among them. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, they were settling the bill. $230 for a meal that could have fed a homeless veteran for weeks. Dad's platinum card gleamed in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the club's crystal windows. There she is, Mom announced as I approached. Feeling better, sweetheart. Sometimes a good cry helps put things in perspective. The condescension in her voice used to make me shrink. Today, it just fueled my resolve. You're absolutely right, Mom, I said, surprising everyone with my steady voice. Perspective changes everything. Sometimes you discover that what you thought was disappointment was actually just preparation. Dad frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm finally learning what my real family looks like. I looked each of them in the eye. And it's not sitting at this table. As we walked to our cars, Cordelia caught my arm. Whatever little tantrum you're planning, get over it. We have important people in this family, Serafina. Don't make us remind you why you've never quite fit in. Oh, Cordelia. I smiled, genuinely calm for the first time in months. I think I'm about to fit in perfectly. Just not where you expect. That night, I met Jessica and her contact, a former federal prosecutor named Marcus Webb who specialized in government contract fraud. I spread every document across Jessica's dining room table like evidence at a crime scene. How long has this been going on? Marcus asked, studying the paper trail. Based on these dates, at least 8 months, probably longer. Jessica looked up from her laptop. Sarah, do you understand what you're alleging? This isn't just fraud. With the veteran angle, this could be federal charges, prison time. I thought about the homeless veteran I'd seen last week sleeping behind the grocery store with a sign that read, "Disabled vet, anything helps." I thought about Dad's new Bentley and Mom's kitchen renovation and Cordelia's boutique empire built on stolen hopes. Good, I said, because some things are more important than family loyalty, like actual honor. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Before we proceed, I need to ask, are you prepared for the consequences? This won't just destroy their business. It'll destroy your family. I looked at the coffee stain on my white dress, now dried to a permanent brown mark. They destroyed our family a long time ago, I said. I'm just finally ready to stop pretending otherwise. The next 72 hours felt like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. Marcus had connected me with Agent Sarah Chin from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, and what started as a suspicious daughter's hunch had become a full federal investigation within 48 hours. Your documentation is remarkably thorough, Agent Chin told me during our second meeting. Most financial fraud cases take months to develop this kind of evidence trail. I almost laughed. 23 years of being ignored teaches you to pay attention to details. The irony was perfect. All those years of being dismissed as the family screw-up had actually made me the most observant person in the room. While they'd been busy excluding me from their inner circle, I'd been watching, noticing, remembering. Every hushed conversation, every suspicious purchase, every moment when their stories didn't quite align. Agent Chin had moved quickly. Within 48 hours, she'd secured warrants for bank records, business documents, and communication logs. But she'd also given me a choice that would change everything. "We have enough evidence to proceed without your continued involvement," she explained. "But if you're willing to help us gather additional evidence, we could build a much stronger case. It would mean wearing a wire, recording conversations, essentially becoming an informant against your own family." The word informant hung in the air like a challenge to everything I'd been taught about family loyalty. But then, I thought about those 67 veterans still waiting for housing, still sleeping in cars and shelters while Dad drove his Bentley to country club brunches. "What do you need me to do?" That's how I found myself sitting in Dad's office on Wednesday morning, a recording device smaller than a quarter hidden beneath my blazer, asking innocent questions about the family business. "I've been thinking about what you said at brunch," I began carefully. "About the business struggling. Maybe I could help with marketing or social media." Dad looked uncomfortable. He'd been avoiding eye contact since the coffee incident, probably feeling guilty about not defending me. Good. Guilt made people talkative. "Serafina, you know the construction industry isn't really your area of expertise. But marketing is, and I've been looking at your contracts online. That Veterans Housing Project sounds amazing. What an honor to help our heroes." His face went pale. "Where did you see that? Public records." "Dad, it's incredible what you're doing for those veterans. When will they be able to move in?" The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Dad's hands fidgeted with his coffee mug. The same hands that had signed fraudulent documents, that had deposited stolen money, that had failed to defend his daughter when she needed him most. "There have been some complications with materials," he finally said. "What kind of complications?" "Just supply chain issues. You wouldn't understand." There it was again. The casual dismissal, the assumption that I couldn't comprehend their sophisticated adult concerns. But today, it just gave me more ammunition. "Try me. I work in project management now. Maybe I could help troubleshoot." Dad's phone rang, saving him from having to answer. But I caught enough of his conversation with the caller, something about moving money faster and the Inspector General's office, to know that they were getting nervous. After I left Dad's office, I drove straight to Cordelia's flagship boutique. My sister was in her element there, surrounded by overpriced clothes and pretentious customers who validated her sense of superiority. "Sarah, what a surprise." Cordelia's smile was as fake as her concern. "How are you feeling after Sunday's little incident?" "Actually, I wanted to apologize." I lied smoothly. "I was completely out of line. You and Mom and Dad have worked so hard to build your success, and here I am being jealous and petty." Cordelia preened at the validation. "Well, it takes maturity to admit when you're wrong." "I've been thinking about that a lot. How did you manage to expand so quickly? 4 locations in such a short time frame must have required serious capital." "Investors believe in vision," Cordelia said smugly. "Something you'll understand when you find your own path instead of always trying to insert yourself into ours." "These investors, are they local?" "I'm actually networking for my own career now, trying to meet people who understand business development." Cordelia's expression shifted slightly. Too many questions were making her suspicious. "Why the sudden interest in my business model?" This was the moment. Either I backed down and stayed the compliant family disappointment, or I pushed forward and gathered the evidence that would bring them all down. "Because maybe it's time I learned from the best," I said, hating how the lie tasted. You've obviously figured out something I haven't. That ego stroke worked. For the next 20 minutes, Cordelia bragged about her investment strategies and creative financing solutions. She didn't explicitly confess to money laundering, but she said enough to confirm that Riverside Development LLC was indeed the vehicle they'd been using to wash the stolen contract money. The key is having the right legal structure, she explained. Multiple LLCs, proper paper trails, legitimate business expenses. Dad taught me that complexity creates plausible deniability. I nodded like an eager student while my hidden recorder captured every word. But the real breakthrough came when I visited Mom that evening. I'd called ahead, claiming I wanted to apologize for my behavior and maybe help plan Dad's upcoming birthday party. Mom was in her newly renovated kitchen, admiring granite countertops that had been purchased with money stolen from homeless veterans. The contrast was nauseating. "I'm so glad you're finally growing up, Serafina," she said while preparing tea. "Your father and I have been worried about your attitude lately." "I know, and I want to make things right. Maybe I could contribute something to Dad's party. I know money's been tight with the business challenges." "Oh, sweetheart, you don't need to worry about money. Your father's just being cautious. The Veterans Project is actually going very well." My pulse quickened. "Really?" Because he seemed stressed about material delays. "Between you and me," Mom leaned in conspiratorially, "that's just what he tells people. The real money comes from managing the contract efficiently. Why spend $8 million when you can deliver the same result for $4 million? The difference is just smart business." There it was, a full confession that they were planning to pocket $4 million meant for veterans' housing. "That's brilliant," I managed to say. "How does the accounting work for something like that?" "Cordelia handles all the complex financial structures. She's so much better with numbers than you are, dear. Thank goodness we have one daughter who inherited your father's business sense." The casual cruelty in that statement, comparing me unfavorably to my criminal sister while discussing stolen money, was almost more than I could bear. But I kept recording. By the time I left Mom's house, I had everything Agent Chen needed. Full confessions, detailed explanations of their money laundering scheme, and proof that they'd never intended to complete the Veterans Housing Project. That night, I sat in my apartment listening to the recordings, hearing my family casually discuss destroying the lives of military heroes. They sounded so matter-of-fact about it, so entitled to money that wasn't theirs. But what hurt most wasn't the crime itself. It was how naturally they'd excluded me from it. Even their criminal conspiracy was something I wasn't worthy to join. Well, they were about to learn that being underestimated was my greatest advantage. Agent Chen's text came at midnight. "Recordings received. Moving to next phase tomorrow. Are you ready?" I looked at the coffee stain on my white dress hanging in my closet like evidence of their contempt. "More than ready," I typed back. "Let's give them the surprise they deserve." The federal investigation moved faster than I'd expected. By Friday morning, Agent Chen had assembled a task force that included the Inspector General's office, the Department of Veterans Affairs Fraud Unit, and local law enforcement. But she'd also given me the most difficult assignment yet. "We need more evidence of the money trail," she explained during our meeting at an unremarkable coffee shop across town. "Your recordings prove intent, but we need documentation of the actual financial transfers, bank statements, wire transfer records, accounting ledgers. Those would be in Dad's home office or Cordelia's business files." "Exactly, which means we need someone with access to obtain them legally." The weight of what she was asking settled over me like a heavy blanket. "You want me to steal from my own family." "I want you to help us recover stolen money meant for homeless veterans," Agent Chen corrected gently. "But yes, it would require accessing private documents." I thought about the veteran I'd seen last week still sleeping behind the grocery store despite the November cold. I thought about the 66 others like him waiting for housing that would never come, because my family preferred granite countertops and luxury cars. Tell me exactly what you need. Over the next hour, Agent Chin outlined a plan that would require careful timing and significant risk. The following Sunday was Dad's birthday party, a family gathering at their house where I could potentially access his home office while everyone was distracted. You'd be wearing a wire again, but this time also carrying a small camera device. Document everything you can find, but don't take anything physical. We need the evidence to be admissible in court. What if they catch me? Agent Chin's expression was serious. Then you'd be on your own until we could move in. Your family would know you've been investigating them, and we couldn't guarantee your safety. That night, I called Jessica to talk through my fears. You don't have to do this, Sarah, she said. You've already provided enough evidence to start the investigation. But not enough to finish it. These people destroyed 67 lives for money they didn't need. If I don't see this through, they might find a way to escape consequences. And if they find out what you're doing, I considered that question seriously. My family had spent 23 years making me feel worthless, unwanted, and inadequate. What was the worst they could do now? Disown me? They'd already done everything but make it official. Then I'll finally know where I stand, I said. But those veterans will know someone fought for them. Jessica was quiet for a moment. You know what? You're not the family failure, Sarah. You're the family hero. They just never recognized it. Sunday arrived with perfect autumn weather. Crisp air, golden leaves, the kind of day that made everything seem possible. I drove to my parents' house with recording equipment hidden in my purse and a camera device disguised as a phone charger. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. Extended family, friends, business associates, all celebrating Dad's 60th birthday while completely unaware that their host was a federal criminal. Serafina, Uncle Robert, grabbed me in a bear hug. How's our girl doing? Our girl. If only he knew that our girl was about to bring down the guest of honor. I made small talk for an appropriate amount of time, complimenting Mom's decorations and Cordelia's dress, playing the role of grateful younger daughter who'd learned her place. The performance was exhausting, but it was working. Everyone had relaxed around me, stopped watching their words. That's when I overheard Cordelia talking to her husband near the bar. The final transfer goes through Tuesday, she was saying quietly. $2.4 million to the Cayman account, then we're clean. My blood went cold. They were planning to move the money offshore in 2 days. If I didn't get evidence tonight, they might escape with everything. I waited until Dad was distracted with his birthday toast, then slipped upstairs to his home office. The door was locked, but I'd remembered the hiding place for the spare key. Inside a fake book on the hallway shelf, the same spot it had been since I was 12. Dad's office was a monument to his ego. Awards photos with local politicians, a display case full of golf trophies. But behind all that self-congratulation were filing cabinets full of criminal evidence. I started with his computer, which thankfully wasn't password protected. The email account linked to Riverside Development LLC was still open, showing months of correspondence about project modifications and cost adjustments. I photographed everything, my hands shaking, as I captured screen after screen of incriminating evidence. Then I found the physical files. Bank statements showing regular transfers from the Morrison Construction business account to Riverside Development LLC, property purchase agreements signed with laundered money. Most damning of all, a handwritten ledger detailing exactly how much money they'd diverted from each phase of the veteran's contract. They'd stolen $3.7 million so far, with plans to take another $2.4 million before disappearing the rest into offshore accounts. But as I photographed the final pages of evidence, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Panic flooded my system. If they caught me here, everything would be ruined. I quickly closed the files, shut down the computer, and looked for an escape route. but the footsteps were already in the hallway. Think, Serafina. Think like the family disappointment they expect you to be. I grabbed a framed photo from Dad's desk, a picture of us from my high school graduation, and knocked over a pencil holder, scattering pens across the floor. Then I sat down in Dad's chair and started crying. The door opened and Dad walked in, looking confused and concerned. Serafina, what are you doing in here? I'm sorry, I sobbed, holding up the graduation photo. I miss how things used to be, before I disappointed everyone so much. Dad's expression softened. Guilt was a powerful weapon when used correctly. Oh, sweetheart, you didn't disappoint us. Yes, I did. The coffee incident, my attitude lately, always asking questions nobody wants to answer. I just want to belong somewhere. Dad sat down across from me, and for a moment he looked like the father I'd once adored. You belong here, Sarah. You're family. Then why does it feel like everyone's keeping secrets from me? The question hung in the air like a test. Dad could have opened up, could have trusted me, could have chosen honesty over crime. Instead, he chose the lie that would seal his fate. There are no secrets, honey. Just adult responsibilities you don't need to worry about. Even now, even in this moment of apparent tenderness, he couldn't resist condescending to me. You're right, I said, wiping fake tears. I should focus on my own life instead of trying to understand yours. That's my girl. As we walked downstairs together, Dad's arm around my shoulders in a gesture of paternal affection, I felt the weight of the evidence in my purse. By Tuesday, that same arm would probably be in handcuffs. The rest of the party passed in a surreal haze. I watched my family celebrate while knowing their world was about to implode. Cordelia gave a toast about Dad's integrity and business success. Mom presented him with an expensive watch purchased with stolen money. Uncle Robert told stories about Dad's charitable nature and community involvement. I smiled in applaud and played my part perfectly, just like I'd been doing my entire life. But when Agent Chin texted me that evening, I felt something I'd never experienced before, the satisfaction of having power over people who'd controlled me for decades. Evidence received and verified, her message read. Warrants approved for Tuesday morning. Thank you for your courage. Courage. That was a word I'd never associated with myself. I'd always been the coward daughter, the one who accepted mistreatment and begged for scraps of approval. But maybe courage wasn't about being fearless. Maybe it was about being terrified and acting anyway because something bigger than yourself was at stake. Those 67 veterans deserved someone to fight for them, and for the first time in my life, I was proud to be that someone. Tuesday morning couldn't come fast enough. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of gray November sky that matched my mood perfectly. Agent Chin had texted me at 6 a.m. Operation begins at 8. Stay available but maintain normal routine. I was stirring my third cup of coffee when my phone rang. Jessica's name appeared on the screen, and I answered, expecting moral support for the biggest day of my life. Instead, I got devastation. Sarah, we have a problem. Jessica's voice was strained, panicked. Marcus called me an hour ago. The story's been killed. The coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering against my kitchen floor. What do you mean, killed? My editor spiked it. Said we don't have enough corroboration, that it's too risky to publish fraud allegations against a prominent local family without additional sources. My world tilted sideways. Jessica's newspaper story was supposed to run today, providing public pressure to support the federal investigation. Without media coverage, my family could spin the arrests as persecution or misunderstanding. But we have recordings, documents, everything. That's not how journalism works, Sarah. We need independent verification on the record source's official statements. Your undercover recordings can't be our primary evidence. I sank into a chair, pieces of broken ceramic scattered around my feet like fragments of my shattered plan. So what happens now? Marcus thinks someone got to my editor, made a call, applied pressure. Your family has connections, political influence. They might know what's coming. The implication hit me like ice water. If my family knew about the investigation, they'd had time to destroy evidence, move money, prepare defenses. All my risk, all my careful evidence gathering might have been for nothing. But it got worse. There's something else, Jessica continued reluctantly. Marcus wants to meet with you today. He says he has information about your family's legal strategy. 2 hours later, I sat across from Marcus Webb in a downtown coffee shop, watching him avoid eye contact while delivering the worst news of my life. Your sister Cordelia contacted me yesterday, he said quietly. She knows about your cooperation with the FBI. My blood turned to ice. How is that possible? I don't know, but she's hired Brennan Walsh and Associates to represent the family. They're the best white-collar criminal defense firm in the state. Marcus, please tell me you didn't— I didn't say anything, Sarah. I swear on my children's lives. But somehow they know you've been recording conversations and providing documents to federal agents. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm, too exposed. My family knew. They knew everything. What did Cordelia want from you? Marcus finally met my eyes, and what I saw there broke my heart. She offered me a job, senior partner at a firm they're starting, $600,000 salary plus equity. And I told her I'd consider it. The betrayal was so complete, so unexpected, that I actually laughed. Here was another person I'd trusted, another ally who'd proven that everyone had a price. You're going to take it. Sarah, you have to understand. No. I stood up abruptly. I understand perfectly. They buy you, they silence Jessica's editor, and suddenly the evidence disappears or becomes inadmissible. How much did my family pay you to access my information? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Marcus? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I trusted the wrong person with everything. Marcus reached for my arm as I turned to leave. Wait, there's something else you need to know. Against my better judgment, I sat back down. They're not just trying to discredit the investigation. They're planning to frame you. The words hit me like physical blows. Frame me for what? Corporate espionage. Theft of proprietary business information. They're claiming you hacked into company computers and stole confidential documents to sell to competitors. My laugh this time was bitter hollow. That's insane! I'm their daughter! That's their defense. They're painting you as an unstable family member who's been struggling financially and emotionally since losing your previous job. They have witnesses who'll testify about your erratic behavior, your apparent mental health issues, your desperate attempts to insert yourself into family business matters. I thought about every family gathering where they'd dismissed my questions, every conversation where they'd treated me like an unreliable child. They'd been building this narrative for months, maybe years. I wasn't their daughter. I was their escape plan. The coffee incident, I whispered, understanding flooding through me. Mom humiliating me in public, making sure everyone saw me as unstable and vindictive. They're very smart, Sarah, and they have resources you can't match. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chin. Warrants delayed pending review. Please call immediately. I showed Marcus the message. Let me guess, your new employers made some calls. He didn't deny it. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My family had betrayed me, my allies had abandoned me, and the federal investigation was crumbling. Everything I'd risked, everything I'd sacrificed, was disappearing into the same black hole that had swallowed my entire life. But as I sat in my car staring at Agent Chin's message, something crystallized inside me. Maybe I'd been approaching this all wrong. Maybe I'd been trying to fight them using their rules, their systems, their networks of power and influence. Maybe it was time to stop being the good daughter and start being the dangerous one. I called Agent Chin. Agent Chin, this is Serafina Morrison. I know about the delay and I know why it happened, but I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. My family thinks they've neutralized me by buying off my allies and discrediting my evidence. They think they're safe. And they're wrong because they made one crucial mistake. What's that? They underestimated me. Again. Agent Chin was quiet for a moment. What are you proposing? Give me 24 hours. I'll get you evidence so damning, so irrefutable that no amount of political pressure or legal maneuvering can make it disappear. Serafina, if your family knows you're cooperating with us, then they'll be watching for the person they think I am, the compliant daughter, the family disappointment who follows rules and seeks approval. I thought about the coffee stain on my white dress, about 23 years of being underestimated and dismissed. But I'm done being that person. Those 67 veterans are still homeless while my family counts stolen money. My former allies think they can sell me out for career advancement. My own parents are planning to destroy my life to save their criminal empire. What exactly are you planning? I'm planning to remind everyone why the family disappointment is the most dangerous person in the room. I hung up before Agent Chin could object, then drove home to prepare for war. My family wanted to play games, perfect. I'd been watching them play for 23 years. Now it was my turn to show them how it's really done. The next morning, I did something completely unexpected. I called Cordelia and asked for help. Cord, it's me. I know things have been weird lately, but I really need my big sister right now. The surprise in her voice was obvious. Sarah, are you okay? No, I'm not. I think I'm having some kind of breakdown. The pressure, the family tensions, my job situation. I feel like I'm losing my mind. It was perfect bait for someone who'd spent years viewing me as mentally unstable. Cordelia's savior complex kicked in immediately. Oh, honey, do you want to come over? We can talk through whatever's troubling you. 2 hours later, I sat in Cordelia's pristine living room, playing the role of desperate younger sister seeking guidance. But this time, I wasn't wearing any recording equipment. This time, I had something better. I've been thinking about what you said about business development. I began carefully. About learning from successful people instead of always feeling like a victim. Cordelia preened. I'm glad you're finally ready to listen. I want to understand how you built your success. Really understand it. Maybe I could work for you. Learn the business from the ground up. My sister's eyes lit up with the prospect of having complete control over me. That's actually a wonderful idea, Sarah. You could start in the boutiques, learn retail management, maybe eventually handle some of the financial aspects. I'd love to learn about the financial side. You always made it sound so sophisticated. It is sophisticated. Most people don't understand the complexity of modern business structures. Multiple revenue streams, international partnerships, creative financing solutions. As Cordelia launched into her favorite subject, her own brilliance, I played the eager student perfectly. But I wasn't recording her confessions this time. I was studying her weaknesses, her ego, her desperate need to prove her superiority. Could you show me some of the actual documents? I asked innocently. I learn better when I can see examples of how these complex structures work. That's when Cordelia made her fatal mistake. She trusted me. For the next hour, she walked me through their entire money laundering operation. Not just the broad strokes, but the specific bank accounts, the exact transfer procedures, the coded language they used in emails. She even showed me the Cayman Islands account information, proud of her international diversification strategy. But most importantly, she revealed something that Agent Chin desperately needed: the location of their backup financial records. Of course we keep everything properly documented. Cordelia explained, pulling out a key from her desk drawer. Dad's office at home is just for show. The real records are in our safety deposit box at First National, Box 479. Marcus helped us set it up to ensure attorney-client privilege. I memorized every detail while maintaining my expression of impressed admiration. Cordelia, you're amazing. I never realized how much I had to learn. Well, it's never too late to start growing up. That evening, I called Agent Chin with information that would change everything. They moved the real evidence to a safety deposit box, bank records, offshore account information, detailed transaction logs, everything you need to prove the money trail. Do you have access to the box? No, but I know the box number and which bank. More importantly, I know they're planning to empty it Thursday morning before transferring the final payment overseas. Agent Chin was quiet for a moment. That gives us a narrow window. We'd need a warrant for the safety deposit box in coordination with bank security. There's more. My sister inadvertently gave me their complete operational structure. I know which accounts connect to what, how they code their communications, even the passwords for their offshore banking access. Serafina, this is incredible, but I have to ask, how did you get this information without recording equipment? Because this time, I didn't need proof of what they said. I needed proof of what they did, and sometimes the best evidence is just knowing exactly where to look. The next morning brought unexpected reinforcement in the form of a phone call that changed everything. Is this Serafina Morrison? Yes, who's calling? My name is Detective Ray Martinez with the State Bureau of Investigation. Agent Chin asked me to contact you. I think we can help each other. An hour later, I sat across from Detective Martinez in an unmarked police car, learning that my family's crimes were bigger than I'd imagined. We've been investigating Morrison Construction for 18 months, Martinez explained. Not for the veterans contract, meh. For a pattern of overbilling and fraud on state highway projects going back 5 years. My family had been stealing from multiple government contracts simultaneously. But every time we got close to building a case, witnesses would recant, documents would disappear, or key evidence would be ruled inadmissible. Someone's been protecting them. Political connections. More than that. Judges who owe favors, prosecutors who've received campaign contributions, business leaders who benefit from maintaining the status quo. Martinez looked at me seriously. Your family didn't just steal money, Serafina. They corrupted an entire network of public officials. The scope of their crimes was staggering, and suddenly I understood why Marcus had betrayed me, why Jessica's editor had killed the story, why the federal warrants had been delayed. My family hadn't just bought silence, they'd bought protection. But here's the thing, Martinez continued. All that protection depends on keeping their crimes hidden. The moment we have irrefutable evidence that becomes public, their political allies will abandon them to save themselves. What do you need from me? Agent Chin told me about the safety deposit box. If we can document the contents before they move everything offshore, we can simultaneously break the veterans fraud case in our highway contract investigation. How? You're going to help us catch them in the act of destroying evidence. That afternoon, Martinez outlined a plan that was both brilliant and terrifying. On Thursday morning, when Cordelia went to empty the safety deposit box, I would be there, not to confront her, but to document everything. We'll have surveillance teams in place, but we need someone inside the bank who can visually confirm what documents they're removing. Someone who has a legitimate reason to be there. A legitimate reason. You're opening your own safety deposit box. Account services. Completely normal banking business. The plan was simple but dangerous. If Cordelia spotted me, or if anything went wrong, I'd be trapped in a confined space with a criminal who now knew I was working against her. But as I looked at Detective Martinez's case files, photographs of shoddy highway construction that had caused accidents, documentation of substandard materials that had put lives at risk, I realized my family's crimes weren't just about stealing money anymore. They were about public safety, about the integrity of infrastructure that protected entire communities. Detective Martinez, when we do this tomorrow, I want to make sure we get everything. No loopholes, no technicalities, no escape routes. Are you sure you're ready for this? I thought about those 67 homeless veterans, about the families who'd driven on unsafe highways, about the decades of corruption that had flourished because good people had stayed silent. I've been ready my entire life, I said. I just didn't know it yet. Thursday morning would either destroy my family's criminal empire or destroy me in the process. Either way, the truth was finally going to see daylight. Thursday morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of day that made everything seem possible. I stood outside First National Bank at 8:30 a.m. wearing a wire, carrying a concealed camera, and feeling more focused than I'd ever felt in my life. Detective Martinez's voice crackled through my earpiece. Target vehicle approaching. Blue Mercedes license plate matches. You're clear to enter. I walked into the bank with steady steps, approaching the customer service desk just as Cordelia entered through the main doors. She looked nervous, checking her phone repeatedly and glancing around like she expected trouble. She didn't notice me. I'd like to open a safety deposit box, I told the customer service representative loud enough for Cordelia to hear if she was listening. Certainly, we'll need to review our available sizes and pricing options. As the representative pulled out brochures and forms, I positioned myself with a clear view of the safety deposit box area. Cordelia was already speaking with a bank officer, providing identification and signing access logs. My heart pounded as she disappeared into the vault area with the officer. This was it, the moment that would either provide the evidence we needed or prove that my family was too smart to be caught. 23 minutes later, Cordelia emerged carrying 2 large manila envelopes and a small metal box. Even from across the lobby, I could see she was sweating despite the cool morning air. Ma'am, the customer service rep was trying to get my attention. Did you want to proceed with opening an account today? Actually, let me think about it over the weekend, I said, watching Cordelia exit the bank quickly. I want to make sure I choose the right size. Martinez's voice in my ear. Target has left the building. We have visual confirmation of document removal. Moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 was the riskiest part of our plan. Instead of arresting Cordelia immediately, we were going to follow her to wherever she planned to destroy the evidence. The goal was to catch her in the act, creating an obstruction of justice charge that would be impossible to dismiss or plea bargain away. I left the bank and got into my car, following Martinez's directions to a surveillance position 3 blocks away. From there, we watched as Cordelia drove to an industrial area on the outskirts of town. She's heading for Morrison Construction's equipment yard, Martinez observed through binoculars, probably planning to burn everything in one of their metal drums. We followed at a distance as Cordelia's Mercedes wound through the industrial complex to a fenced area filled with construction equipment. She parked next to a small office building and began unloading the materials she'd taken from the safety deposit box. Units in position, Martinez radioed to his team. Wait for my signal. Through his binoculars, I watched my sister pile documents next to a burn barrel, pouring what looked like accelerant over bank statements and contracts worth millions of dollars. She was destroying evidence of not just the veterans' fraud, but 5 years of highway contract manipulation. Now, Key, Martinez commanded. Police vehicles surrounded the construction yard from 3 directions. Cordelia looked up from her pile of evidence like a deer caught in headlights, still holding a lit match. Cordelia Morrison Fletcher, you're under arrest for destruction of evidence, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Even from our observation position, I could hear her shouting, "You can't do this! I have rights! This is harassment!" But the evidence was undeniable. She'd been caught red-handed destroying documents that had been subpoenaed in a federal investigation. Martinez handed me a radio. Want to listen to the rest? Within minutes, simultaneous arrests were happening across the city. Dad was taken into custody at Morrison Construction's main office. Mom was arrested at her weekly tennis lesson, handcuffed in front of the country club where she'd humiliated me just 2 weeks earlier. But the most satisfying arrest was Marcus Webb, who'd been caught at his law office shredding files related to Riverside Development, LLC. His new job with my family's legal firm had lasted exactly 8 days. Agent Chin's voice came through the radio. All targets in custody. Evidence secured. Outstanding work, everyone. As I drove home from the surveillance operation, my phone rang constantly. Uncle Robert, family friends, business associates. Everyone wanted to know if the news reports were true, if our family had really been arrested for stealing from veterans. I turned off my phone and sat in silence, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. By evening, the story was everywhere. Jessica's newspaper had published a detailed exposé. Apparently, her editor's concerns had disappeared once the arrests became official. The headline read, Local construction family arrested in multi-million-dollar veterans housing fraud. The article detailed everything: the stolen contract money, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the pattern of a political corruption that had protected them for years. But it also mentioned something I hadn't expected: quotes from actual veterans who'd been waiting for the housing that never came. James Wilson, a disabled Marine, told reporters, I've been sleeping in my car for 8 months waiting for the apartment they promised. While I was counting quarters for gas money, they were buying Bentleys with money meant to help heroes. That quote broke my heart and validated everything I'd done. But the real surprise came the next morning when Agent Chin called with unexpected news. Serafina, there's something you should know. Your family's arrests have triggered a much larger investigation. The corruption network they were part of is unraveling. Over the next week, I watched as 3 judges were suspended pending ethics investigations, 2 prosecutors resigned under pressure, and a city council member was arrested for accepting bribes. My family's crimes had been the keystone that held together a complex web of corruption. 6 months later, the trials were over. Dad received 8 years in federal prison. Cordelia got 6 years plus full restitution. Mom, who'd cooperated with prosecutors, received 3 years probation and community service, specifically working at a homeless shelter that served veterans. The irony of Mom serving meals to the very people she'd helped defraud wasn't lost on anyone, but the real justice came in smaller moments. James Wilson and 12 other veterans moved into newly constructed housing funded by the recovered stolen money. A memorial wall in the lobby honored their service, something my family's original plan had never included. Detective Martinez offered me a job as a consultant with the State Bureau of Investigation, specializing in financial fraud cases. You have a natural talent for this work, he said. And more importantly, you understand what it means when people in power betray public trust. I accepted immediately. These days, I work with law enforcement agencies across the state, helping investigate corruption and fraud. My understanding of how privileged families operate, combined with my experience being underestimated and dismissed, makes me uniquely effective at penetrating white-collar criminal networks. I've helped recover millions of dollars in stolen public funds. I've exposed corruption in school districts, hospital systems, and municipal governments. And every case reminds me that the family disappointment often sees things that the family favorites are trained to ignore. I never speak to my parents anymore, but I did visit Cordelia in prison once. She looked smaller, somehow diminished without her designer clothes and superior attitude. I still don't understand why you did it, she said through the glass partition. Because 67 veterans were homeless while you bought 4 boutiques with their money, I replied. But we're family. No, Cordelia. Family protects each other. Family doesn't steal from heroes. What we were was just people who shared DNA and a last name. As I walked out of that prison, I realized something profound. I'd spent 23 years trying to earn the approval of people who'd never deserved my respect. Now I wake up every morning knowing that my work matters, that justice isn't just a concept, but something you fight for daily, and that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming someone your enemies could never imagine you'd be. The coffee stain never came out of my white dress. I keep it in my closet as a reminder of the day I stopped being the family disappointment and started being the person those veterans needed me to be. And you know what? That's the best trade I've ever made. Speaking of justice and family karma, I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that family members weren't who you thought they were? How do you handle it when blood loyalty conflicts with doing what's right? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because your experiences might help someone else facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these real-life lessons about standing up for what matters. And definitely subscribe because I share more stories about finding strength in unexpected places and fighting for justice even when it costs everything. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the family failure is actually the family hero in disguise. Thank you for listening to my journey from family doormat to federal investigation consultant. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't determined by people who never valued your heart. Life has a funny way of showing you that the people who dismiss you often have the most to hide. Trust your instincts, fight for what's right, and never apologize for having integrity in a world that sometimes rewards corruption.